Hey guys, welcome to Vibe Fitness. I'm here with my main man Mike. It's Magic Mike, sometimes people call him.
Yeah, with his clothes on.
And we're just going to have a little chat about some of the common problems that we see as fitness professionals. So, from excess sitting, people come and see us through getting back pain. And we're just going to look at some of those common areas, the common problems, some of those buzzwords that we talk about, like posture, stabilization,
neutral spine.
Yeah, all those types of things. I'm just going to look at some of the tools that we can also use to help us stay pain-free. So, yeah, welcome Mike. Thanks for coming and chat to us.
All right, nice to be here.
So we're just going to, we'll talk a little bit about what we see, back pain. Quite a lot of people say, oh, I get that dull pain in my back.
Yeah.
How can you fix it?
Yeah, I think the number one thing we see over and over due to weak core and sitting posture, the invention of the chair over the years has led to a chronic condition they call lower cross syndrome, in which the pelvis is tilted forward and there's a lot of pressure put on the lumbar spine and a lot of tension on the sacroiliac joint. And you can see the pelvis is tilting forward primarily from tight or foreshortened hip muscles on the front, or hip flexors. The big one being the rectus femoris, which is a quadricep muscle, but it's also a hip flexor. So it extends the knee, flexes the hip, and hooks onto the pelvis. That becomes tight, it pulls everything forward, and causes us to be in this kind of locked position.
Hey, do you know what I see, Mike? Sorry to interrupt you. Is that I see quite a lot of people and they go, yeah, but I'm flexible there. Look, I can stand on one leg and I can pull myself into the position. I'm not tight there. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, yeah, they may be flexible in that they have a long piece here because they've done a lot of quad stretching, but they're still quite tight up here, and they haven't loosened off the upper part of the rec fem. So even though they're standing there with a nice quad stretch, the pelvis is still tilted forward. And if you try to get them to activate the glute and scoop the pelvis, they lose that stretch, and their foot goes into extension because they're still very tight right there. So the first thing we're going to look at is just opening up this front line, as it's called, and see if we can take the pelvis from a tilted position into more of a neutral scooped position. So it's going to be pulling the body and everything back.
And I guess that would alleviate, in a way, if people can understand that activation, that it would loosen their backs. I guess, yeah,
it's taking the stress off of this SI joint. As you can see, when you're back like this, there's quite an angle put on that area. So by scooping forward, in addition to moving the pelvis, we're also engaging the floor part of the inner core, or the lower deep abdominals. And those are often quite weak on people, and that's the other problem too.
Yeah.
And
I think people also don't realise that it can something be, I mean, we haven't even talked about up here yet, but that we do have this natural curve in the spine, right?
Yeah.
And some people will have these very interesting spinal shapes, but what we're trying to say, I guess what Mike's trying to say, is that we need to be aware of them, and counteract the problems with having maybe an excess C curve in the spine, or maybe we're quite curvy in the back here, all lordosis.
Yeah.
So,
and a lot of the pain problems that people end up going to surgery for, to have decompression and injections, epidural, steroid injections, which are quite popular now, is due to those facet joints being impinged due to that pelvic tilt over the years. Those vertebrae become compressed. So what we're doing, in addition to activating the front part of the core, scooping the pelvis, we're getting the vertebra back in alignment and taking the pressure off the facet joints and hopefully improving nerve flow. So there's tons of stuff which happens in this area. So essentially we're going to work on fighting flexion being this forward action here.
And I guess we get that from if we're sat a lot of time flexed forward in a computer position or driving or
we spend in the Western world we spend probably 75-80% of our day like this, hunched over, shortened here.
And then what happens here? The neck and the neck comes forward, doesn't it? And for people also, another thing to mention is that we're sort of deviating, going around the subject here, but the eyesight. If your eyesight starts to deteriorate, you end up, that neck even goes further forward.
Yeah, and the body's going to do whatever it needs to keep the eyes level. So it's going to distort and do whatever to keep the eyes level to the horizon. And over the years, we got gravity, which is actually quite a force that we don't realize. Ask somebody that's gone to space and come back. And we fight that. And we haven't done ourselves any favor by introducing the chair. You go to third world countries where they don't have chairs, called squatters. They all sit like this with their neutral spine, and they do everything in this position. And they have hardly any back problems. They obviously have some knee problems, but you go to you go to the Philippines or Thailand, and they don't have these issues like we do here.
Yeah, we've tried to gloss around them slightly, haven't we, by introducing like massage chairs and etc. etc. And that can actually, we're glossing over the subject, aren't we? Where the real problem lies.
Yeah. So and that stuff is all good, but unless you address the core issues and the strength problems and deficiencies in flexibility, that stuff is just going to placate and cover the core issues.
Yeah. Let's give something for the guys to go away with and to practice. We talked about just before we started rolling here the idea that we can scoop under. So what would you recommend for someone that might have a slight back pain, and what would you prescribe them, Mike, to get going with?
Well, if they have a mirror that they can look in so they can see what they're doing, you just stand sideways to the mirror, and as you can see, I'll put that so you can see the camera. That way you can get a visual on what you're actually doing. And essentially this is kind of Pilates stuff, where you're standing, the feet parallel, soft knees. A classic thing is tight hips and locked out knees like this.
I see that.
With the tilt.
A lot of females I see.
Yeah, and
typically a lot
it's
of
really it's a chronic problem. So the first thing, we want to get ourselves into neutral. Looks like this, soft knee. So that's how we start the process. You can see it from the side, and the knees are just a slight, maybe 5-degree angle there. And then once we have ourselves set and our weight into our heels, then we take one hand in back, one hand in front, and we scoop the pelvis by activating those lower abdominal muscles and go from here to there. At first it's going to feel odd because you're not used to being in this position. You're going to feel like you may be falling backwards, and it's going to take a while for the brain to go through this reprogramming. We're setting down a whole new framework or mapping in the cerebellum here. So all of this posture work is going to feel odd in the beginning. So the first thing is get that pelvis scooped and nice hold. And the first thing you're going to feel is tightness on the front here. And that's primarily not necessarily tight muscles as it is the fascia that encases the muscle. And a lot of what we're going to be doing is loosening that fascia so the muscle can fully extend and relax. Okay? Yeah. So that's the first thing, is to get some visual so we can kind of see the line.
I mean, I talk to my clients about this quite a lot of the time, and having your hands here just gives you some feedback to where you are. So I'm a fan of that, and you can do this lying down, where you get even more feedback from the ground. But why not from day to day? We're out and about, etc. You can do this anywhere.
Yeah, you can do this in if you live in United Kingdom, you probably find yourself standing in a queue a lot. That's a perfect time to practice this posture stuff, and that's where you see most of the problems in people standing in the queue, leaning on one hip, allowing that whole core to collapse and putting a lot of stress all over the body. And that's a perfect time to become aware, plant yourself, soft knees, pelvic scoop, and you can actually be doing a workout while you're waiting in line. And being a posture nerd, I do that a lot. People are always staring at me, but I don't care. I've alleviated a lot of my back problems by doing that.
Yeah. So what would you say? This is obviously our first little shoot here on back pain. But what would you give someone? How many times should they be doing this? Mike?
Well, if you can do this at least twice a day, once in the morning, once at night. But if you can take that even further and do it 3-4 times a day, the more you do it, the quicker that programming is going to start laying down in the brain. And when you do stand in an awkward posture, your brain's going to register and say, ooh, this isn't right, and you're going to put yourself back where you need to be. And you'll be amazed, over a short period of time, all those little aches and pains you were getting are going to start going away.
Yeah.
And it's not something that happens overnight. It's a gradual thing.